Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, we're taking it back a little bit to a series we had been doing for a little bit, and then, I don't want to say abandoned, because we're coming back to it now, but we haven't done a Zelda episode in about 6 months, so Mike is going to break it down. We got some of the later later, but still old Zelda games that we're covering.
Yeah, it's later, but it's still, Zelda is so long. There's so much to do still, even after this episode, but... So this week, we're going to be talking about Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, and Skyward Sword. So let us start out with the Phantom Hourglass Grime Facts.
Yeah. These are three games that I have spent almost no time playing at all.
Me too, which was very fun for research purposes because I had to watch a lot of YouTube videos to figure this out. So developer for Phantom Hourglass was Nintendo EAD, the Entertainment Analysis and Development Division. They actually are responsible for all three games today that we'll be talking about.
Okay.
The releases on this were only on Nintendo DS and the Wii U Virtual Console, which I don't know if the Wii U Virtual Console is still available. Is it? Do
That's
you know, Tyler?
That's a good question. I'm going to do
Maybe
some Googling while you read the rest of these Grime Facts.
Okay, that works for me. So the Nintendo DS release happened in Japan on June 23rd, 2007. In North America, Australia, and the EU in October 2007, and then in Korea on April 3rd, 2008. So the number of copies sold, which is as of March 2008, is what I could find. That's 4.13 million copies. 910,000 of those copies were sold exclusively in Japan. I wanted to say that this wasn't the only copies of the game sold, but then I realized Nintendo is very well known for printing a certain number of copies for a game and then not reprinting them.
Yep.
So that very well could be like close to the maximum amount of copies actually of this game new that were sold.
Could
Used
be
market, there's no way to tell, but obviously for new.
Those aren't new copies either.
Yeah. So genre or gameplay style, this is action adventure. They're all action adventure. It's Zelda. Here
It's a Zelda game, yeah. I did look it up. The Wii U Virtual Console does still exist. You can still buy Phantom Hourglass. It's $10 on the Wii U Virtual Console.
Hey, you know what? That's good. That's crazy that they're still covering it. Props to Nintendo for covering it still. So if you have a Wii U, that's how you can play this game. Awards, accolades, or groundbreaking achievement. Well, this game has a lot of awards, which I will now read for them for you. IGN 2007 DS Game of the Year, GameSpy 2007 DS Game of the Year, GameSpot Editor's Choice Award, the IGN Editor's Choice Award, the 2008 Golden Joystick Award for Best Handheld Game, the Game Developers Choice Awards 2007 Best Handheld Game, the 2007 Game Pro Editor's Choice Award for Best Handheld Game, the 2007 Spike Video Game Awards Best Handheld Game, the 2008 Interactive Achievement Award, which seems kind of big, the E3 2006 Best Nintendo DS Game by GameSpot, and the Best Handheld Game at the Game Critics Awards. Wow. So yeah, it's a very, very well-awarded game. The average time to complete this game takes 17 hours if you're just playing the main story, or 31 hours if you want to be a hardcore completionist. I don't know your style. You choose for you. The Metacritic score for the game is a 90 out of 100, which is very, very good. Now we're going to do new Grime Fact. There's one new Grime Fact that we're adding in all the Zelda games from here on out, and that is, where is this chronologically?
Oh, in the overall Zelda universe, the timeline?
Yes, because you know what I want to do? I want to confuse the listener and myself as much as possible, so we're going to go for this. Phantom Hourglass lies in the adult era of the Link being victorious timeline. The game sits right after Wind Waker and right before Spirit Tracks.
And it's the same Link as the one from Wind Waker, right?
It is, yes, the same Link. And he's an adult, even though, due to the animation, he looks like a child. It's all very confusing. But let's talk development. So development started on this in May 2004, and this was actually originally going to be just like Four Swords Adventures. That was going to be the idea. And we know this because in a press conference in October 6th, 2004, Shigeru Miyamoto said, quote, "We're thinking of bringing Four Swords to the DS." So he was actually just said it was going to be like Four Swords.
All right.
Fun fact about Shigeru Miyamoto, he loved Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures. Big fan of those games, if you didn't know. We're going to come back to that a little later. So the reason the gameplay was so close to Four Swords Adventures is the same development team that worked on Four Swords Adventures also worked on what would become Phantom Hourglass. And the game's first prototype actually had some minor changes to it. All of the action in the game took place on the upper screen, but what you controlled was on the lower screen because this is on the Nintendo DS, the first iteration of the dual screen, hence DS.
You got to use that touch screen.
That's right. But this was actually changed because what they realized is everyone was only looking at the bottom screen and missing all of the action because you can only control and look at one thing while looking at another thing. This is where minds work. So what they did is they put all of the action on the same screen that you control, and then the other screen was just used as a map, essentially. And fun fact about Nintendo, they really put a lot of thought into different players based on their region. And I think this is something that we've definitely talked about before in our prior history of Nintendo games. But one of the main reasons they switched the interface from the map bottom screen and all the action on the top is because they thought the interface would appeal to Japanese players if it was simpler, if it was all the action on one screen and that extra screen was just kind of there as like a reference.
Gotcha.
The developers also added a battle mode that was over Wi-Fi, and that was to appeal to American players because, as we all know, us Americans, we love online battle modes.
It's
and
true.
if you look into 2020, they were not wrong. Like all the biggest games are like online battle royales, essentially. So one note about the simple interface too is that Nintendo really wanted the DS to sell to casual gamers. They thought that the simplistic interface and control scheme could like help them reach that market. And another important note about this is Wind Waker was not really considered a success by Nintendo. Even though the game was really good, and the people that played it was really good. If you remember, we talked about it. They got a lot of gripe for the art style. And Nintendo was kind of taking a risk by making the same art style in Phantom Hourglass. But once again, they their whole thing is innovation. They wanted to do something new with the Zelda series of games. And this was their idea. So the Nintendo DS also came with a new peripheral, as in the stylus. And in this Phantom Hourglass, you pretty much use the stylus for like everything. You solve puzzles with it. You chart your course on the ocean with it. You move Link with it and attack with it. It's pretty much a big deal, the stylus.
Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Yeah, the touchscreen on the DS actually can be used to direct the boomerang as well. So it's like it does so much. Phantom Hourglass has cel-shaded graphics, just like the Wind Waker, with some influence from Four Swords Adventures also in the artist. Like in how it's artistically done. Link's and Zelda's appearances in Phantom Hourglass really actually closely resemble the Wind Waker, Link, and Zelda. So there you go.
Makes
very
sense
similar.
if they're supposed to be the same Zelda and Link. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So it's good. They're trying to connect it canonically, even though it's super confusing. So what was the Phantom Hourglass gameplay like? Well, you essentially are playing two different games in Phantom Hourglass. You're playing the sailing from island to island mode, where you plot your course using the stylus and you sail between islands and dodge hazards. And then you have the Link goes on land mode, and then that becomes your OG classic Zelda we all know and love. Okay? The big difference I can tell from watching YouTube videos that I think would take some getting used to is the fact that you use the stylus to move Link.
Yeah, I remember that being like kind of jarring for me for what little I played of this game. That was the part that I did not like.
Yeah, and I think that would be jarring for me too. During certain events, including the boss battles, like a 3D view is shown on both screens too. That's something that kind of changed gameplay wise too, so you could see more of your surroundings, because I think that really helps you when you're using the stylus. One new feature that the Phantom Hourglass game introduces to the entire Zelda game series is the idea of a large central dungeon that you come back to throughout the game's story. In Phantom Hourglass, it is the Temple of the Ocean King. You go there multiple times, you get sea charts that allow you to go to other places in the world. There is also a phantom curse in that dungeon that slowly hurts Link over time. Like you lose a little bit of hearts over time if you're not careful and going the right way. They have safe rooms that make it so you don't lose hearts, and they also have the Phantom Hourglass item itself, which helps put the curse away. Like, get away from me, curse. Multiplayer is a one-on-one battle arena where one player controls Link and the other player on defense controls 3 Phantom Guardians, which are these super powerful bad guys in the game. And the player on both sides are aided by like power-up items they can use. And your goal as Link, if you're playing Link, is to grab a Force Gem and carry it to the base. The other player is trying to stop you by catching you and hurting you, like Phantoms do.
Mm-hmm.
That rhymed, but it makes sense, right? So lastly, I want to talk about the plot of the game. The story actually picks up immediately after Wind Waker. So you had just beaten Ganondorf, spoilers, and he's turned to stone. He's now sealed away. And then Link and Tetra, who I believe, like I was kind of confused by this. I'm pretty sure Tetra is an alias of Zelda.
Yes.
Like much like Sheik is. It's the same kind of way. So you're traveling over the now flooded Hyrule on the Great Sea. And you're on Tetra's pirate ship. And then along the way, you find a ghost ship, and Tetra enters it, and crazy stuff happens, and she screams for help. And then all of a sudden, you're washed ashore on an island, and you got to go find her again. You know, classic Zelda.
Yep.
Yeah. So overall, I think Phantom Hourglass is pretty groundbreaking for Zelda games, especially because it was like a really, really good game for a handheld. I really wanted to play this game. I still want to play this game, but from what I can tell, you pretty much have to have a copy of the DS or you have to have the Wii U Virtual Console. And I'm going to tell you right now, both this game and Spirit Tracks are kind of expensive for a used copy on a DS because it is limited printing. So if you have a Wii U, Virtual Console might be the way to go. You haven't played this game, you said, right?
Not really. No, I remember playing it for a little bit when it kind of first came out on DS, because I think my brother had bought a copy of it or something, and he got really into it, and I could not get into it. And I think he got into it probably because he spent his money on it and was like, I'm going to like this, but I did not enjoy it. I didn't like the control scheme with the making you use the touchscreen to control Link. That really did not do it for me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the whole I buy a game and then I feel like I have to like it because I spent money on it and I force myself to complete it even though I don't enjoy it. That's always fun. I've been there. We've all been there. So the next game is Spirit Tracks. And that grime fact, again, developed by Nintendo EAD. This came out in Japan on June 23rd, 2007. Once again, on October 1st, 11th and 19th in NA, AU, EU, respectively, 2007. And then in Korea always gets it late, April 3rd, 2008. The system was Nintendo DS. Again, though, you can buy this on the Wii Virtual Console if you have access to that. During the financial year, this is financial year ending March 31st, 2010, Spirit Tracks sold 2.61 million copies. So not as good as Phantom Hourglass, but still pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, again, an action-adventure game. Awards for this one are kind of funny because it did win the Game Award of 2009 in BAFTA. It did that. But it got runner-up in almost every single other award.
Oh, what was the big game in 2007 that would have... It would have been like Game of the Year competition would have been like Halo 3 or something, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It got hosed, but that's fine. It just came out at a bad time. Average time to complete this game is 19.5 hours for main story or 31 if you are a completionist. And it got an 87 out of 100, which while still not as good as Phantom Hourglass, still pretty darn good. Yeah. Now, chronological grime fact. Here we go. Well, it's right after Phantom Hourglass. So we're still in the Adult Link Victorious timeline, just after Phantom Hourglass. Are you confused yet? We hope not.
Still same Link as Wind Waker.
Same Link, same guy. Everything's fine. Now let's talk about development for this game. So half of the team that made Phantom Hourglass stuck around and worked on Spirit Tracks. The other half of the team was working on another game that we're going to talk about in a moment. Phantom Hourglass graphics were used once again. This is something they didn't mention in my first part, but the actual reason they didn't go with realistic graphics and they went with Wind Waker graphics is they would have to change the scale of the models to show the detail. And that would have just messed up the whole map and made it look really goofy. So that's why they kind of stuck with the cartoony, cel-shaded graphics for this. I
feel like you gotta with that specific Link. You kind of gotta stick with it, right? It'd be kind of weird to change the art style in the middle of like a series with a specific Link. I don't know.
Definitely. And I think that's why they stuck with it too. I just had no idea about that graphic scaling thing, and I thought it was pretty interesting that if you did make Link look like the Link in, say, Twilight Princess or Ocarina of Time, he would have been gigantic compared to the like forest around him. I thought that'd be funny. One of the big changes in Spirit Tracks, though, that I really like from other Zelda games is that this actually rings really true in Breath of the Wild, is Zelda is no longer a damsel in distress, starting with Spirit Tracks. Zelda actually works alongside Link in this game to help him out. She's like a ghost, but she can invade the bodies of those phantoms, those enemies from Phantom Hourglass, and actually help Link throughout the adventure.
Cool.
Part of the reason they did this was Nintendo actually conducted a survey in the United States that showed that consumers preferred more independent female characters. And when they asked for like them to cite characters, Sheik and Tetra were both like identified as like strong female characters. And so they're like, okay, well, we just make Zelda now. Instead of her having this alter ego, she'll just be Zelda and she'll like help Link on the adventure, which I thought was pretty cool.
Nice.
So why a train? Okay, if you don't know, Spirit Tracks is essentially Phantom Hourglass, but instead of a boat, you're a train conductor, which is pretty sweet if you ask me. But the fact that it's on a train is all because of Eiji Aonuma. He is the producer of both Phantom Hourglass, The Wind Waker, and Skyward Sword that we're going to talk about in a second. And he suggested that they not use a boat in this title, but they think of something else. Like they wanted to kind of spruce it up because, they're always trying to do something different with a Zelda game to make it new. And his son, actually loved this book that translates from Japanese to The Tracks Go On and On. And it was a book about trains. And like in the book, like kids construct railroad tracks and like tunnels and bridges. And Aonuma felt that this book like really fit with the series. And so that's kind of why they have a train. Essentially,
That's cool.
It's because of this kid's book that his son was reading. They also had an idea too, because of this book, to like have the player build tracks all throughout the world. Like you would actually be able to build your own railroad in this game. So it would be like Zelda and then also like a railroad sim at the same time. But that was ditched because they realized that they got to like tell people where to go. Like it is linear, I mean, obviously not every Zelda game is linear, but for the handhelds, they got to kind of keep it more linear. And so they decided to instead make it so you build the tracks on a set track, not like you're building your own railroad system in Hyrule, which I would play Hyrule Railroad Sim. Would you?
That sounds really fun. I would definitely play that.
You got to do that. Okay. You got to make those train tracks. So, in order to allow players to like avoid obstacles and enemies on the tracks, the team actually made it so you could reverse and switch tracks, which was kind of cool. That's kind of how they added more freedom to it. And it's also kind of a train puzzle in that way. There's a thing called the Tower of Spirits, and the Tower of Spirits was essentially going to be like the Temple of the Ocean King. But what they found is it was kind of boring to just have the players go back through the entire dungeon again to like
every single time.
It just didn't work the same way the Temple of the Ocean King did. So instead they kind of made this thing where you go up a spiral staircase. So you feel like you're climbing the tower and you're going to a new place every time.
That's cool. I do remember some people being pretty upset with the having to just play the same dungeon over and over in Phantom Hourglass. It was like, okay, I've already done this. And they just made you do it over and over and over, getting a little further each time.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. So they kind of fixed that with this spiral staircase, which, funny enough, was added very much at the end of development. Like it could have been a lot like Phantom Hourglass, but they caught it and they fixed it, which is nice. Some people felt like the train was a little out of place, which, I mean, it makes sense. You're in like a fantasy universe, but the developers were like, hey, you know what? I mean, these are like Zelda titles, and they want the DS titles to be Zelda, but not super like realistic Zelda. So they're just trying to get casual people involved. Okay. Just everyone needs to lighten up. It's fun. It's fine. And I mean, yeah, it's not like I wouldn't put Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks on the same pedestal as say Breath of the Wild or Ocarina of Time. But for a handheld title, I think it was different and it was fun, which is important. I will defend the train, is what I'm telling you. The Hyrule Express, which is, I'm assuming, what it's called. Did not look that up. Gameplay-wise, it's very similar to Phantom Hourglass Go. Instead of sailing a ship, you are riding a train. And you make stops on the train, and then you get into classic Link shenanigans. They have a new item, though, in the game called Zelda's Pan Flute, and you actually blow into the Nintendo DS microphone. And if you complete those songs on the Pan Flute, it does special things, like it reveals like new tracks or hidden secrets. It can heal you. It's pretty cool. So it's like a little added gameplay tweak. The train gameplay actually has you blowing a horn to scare animals off the tracks. You transport goods, and then you transport passengers. And while you're transporting the passengers, you actually have to like keep them happy and stuff, which I think is kind of funny. And then you even get a cannon at one point to shoot enemies from your train.
Nice.
It's kind of like Link Wild Wild West in a way.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
I would play that game. I would play Red Dead Linkdemption.
What was that deal with Nintendo? Like, have all of their games had you blowing into a microphone on the DS? Like, they had this thing where they're like, you know what people really want to do on their DS? They want to blow into the microphone. And like every single game for a while had some kind of blow into the microphone mechanic.
I just picture it because I feel like a lot of this is the generalization, but it's also, I feel like, a very true generalization that a lot of people own DSs in Japan. Like, it was more popular in Japan than anywhere else. So I just picture like a train in Japan where everyone's like blowing into their DS, you know, like on a bus or something. Like, because it is true. You're right. 100%. I remember doing that with some other games and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, you're afraid to do it in public, especially with a handheld game where you are playing it in public a majority of the time.
Yeah.
It is a weird choice.
Strange.
Unlike Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks does not have a like Wi-Fi connection multiplayer. What they did instead is they used that DS download play. So you'd have one game card and you could play with 4 people, which I think is really cool. I love
DS download play.
Yeah, I think it's really neat. The multiplayer mode, by the way, is completely non-canonical. It's 4 players, your different links, like different colored tunics, like usual. And again, this was like Four Swords Adventures, like very similar, because Shigeru Miyamoto loves Four Swords Adventures. He's like a big fan of that game. And that's why these handheld Legend of Zeldas after Four Swords Adventures all included a multiplayer function because Shigeru Miyamoto wanted it, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So when you're playing as those different links, each player actually wants to try to get as many Force Gems of varying sizes, values, and numbers as possible within a set time limit. And then what you're fighting against are other players and then also some NPC phantoms who will attack you on sight and like try to take those away from you. So it's like a really intense multiplayer like battle kind of deal. I kind of I'm thinking of it more like a almost like a Mario Kart style thing. Yeah. Like it's just like battle mode, but with Zelda and you're not on carts. It's kind of like that. So Spirit Tracks features major changes from Phantom Hourglass. As I said before, like you don't have that dungeon crawl in the same dungeon over and over again, but also they got rid of that curse, which is huge because that curse thing I know was also a big thing that was annoyed a lot of people that played Phantom Hourglass, where your health would slowly go down in the temple. The game is set in the land of New Hyrule, okay, which is
as
the kingdom
opposed to
founded,
old Hyrule.
Yeah, so New Hyrule is what happens, I think, and I mean, this is canonical, so I think this is how it goes in the adult timeline. New Hyrule is because Link is victorious. Okay.
Yeah, and I think old Hyrule is still underwater, right?
Yes, right. Yeah. So, and what you're doing is you are actually, Link is an engineering apprentice. Like he's trying to be a train conductor.
After saving the world, you got to get a job.
Yeah, you got to get a job, okay? So he is trying to be a train conductor, and he travels to Hyrule Castle to receive his engineer's certificate. No joke. Link is in a trade school, and he's trying to get his certificate, and he has to go to Princess Zelda to get it, okay? And Zelda's advisor, Chancellor Cole, like it's kind of like the series is pointless. Like the spirit tracks that make up the train systems in New Hyrule are all going away, so why are we even giving this guy a thing? You know, it's stupid. And then what ends up happening, long story short, Zelda gives Link a note to tell her she's in danger and not to trust Chancellor Cole. Chancellor Cole turns her into Ghost Zelda, and then the game starts. That's the way it goes, pretty much.
All right.
Another thing that is important to know about this game is that, like I said before with Phantom Hourglass, you can really only play it on DS, and it is... I think this game's more expensive than Phantom Hourglass. So I looked up new copies out of curiosity, wondering if there was backstock. And Phantom Hourglass was like $59.99 for a new copy, which is pretty expensive. That's pretty much like $20 more than it would be retail when it came out. The new copy of Spirit Tracks on Amazon was $150.
Dang.
Yeah. So I would say go find your local used game store and see if they have one for like 20 or 30 bucks. And if not, maybe it might actually be cheaper to buy a Wii U and play these on Virtual Console. Yeah,
it's $10 on Wii U. I wonder how much a Wii U is on like eBay right now. Or
it might be cheaper. And again, it's because these were such in limited supply. You know, it's just the way it is. All right. So now we're on to our final game. That's right. We're going back to a non-handheld console. We're going to the Wii for Skyward Sword. So once again, developed by Nintendo EAD. The release date was in Europe on November 18th, 2011, North America November 20th, Japan November 23rd, and Australia November 24th. I think for Nintendo, their idea is handheld stuff sells better in Japan and console stuff sells better in Europe and North America. Because if you see their release dates swap back and forth based on if it's a console or if it's a handheld, I think that's what's going on. This only came out on the Nintendo Wii. It is not on anything else. There is no remaster. It is only on the Nintendo Wii. The number of copies sold as of December 2011, 3.41 million units. The genre, gameplay style, action adventure. Now, here's some awards. It did win IGN's Best of 2011 awards for Best Game, Best Graphics, Best Sound, and Best Story. Digital Trends also named it the Best Action Adventure Game, Best Wii Exclusive, and it was nominated for the Game of the Year award. RP Gamer's own Best of 2011 awards named Skyward Sword the Best Console and PC Game and awarded it for Best Music, and we're going to talk about the music at the end. It's really exciting. The Game of the Year awards from Electronic Gaming Monthly, at GameSpot, Edge, and Nintendo Power. It won all of those ones.
Dang.
I mean, I feel like it should win Nintendo Power because it's like a Nintendo magazine. So
yeah. They were biased.
Yeah, they're a little biased. But at Spike Awards, because this is still this time of the Spike Video Game Awards, the game won Best Wii Game and Best Motion Game. So to complete the game, if you want to be main story, 38 and a half hours. Full completionist style, 59 hours. Metacritic score, a 93 out of 100. That's really good.
I need to play this game. I keep just not doing it.
Do you own it?
Should. I think I have a copy of it somewhere.
Yeah, I know that I have a Wii. My girlfriend has a Wii that I bought her as a gift a long time ago. I don't know if we have the Wii Motion Plus, which is required to play this game.
Yeah, you may have a Wii with the Motion Plus built into the controller too, because they at one point after a while they started building them in. So check it; it'll say at the bottom of it if it has it built in.
Oh, okay. I'll look at that. Yeah, I want to know. Now, chronologically, Skyward Sword takes place at the beginning of Zelda. That's right. This is the first Zelda game if you're going on the timeline.
Okay.
So it's about to get confusing. Here is like the little blurb on Wikipedia about like what's going on in the lore. According to legend, 3 ancient goddesses bestowed a great wish-granting power, the Triforce. The demon king Demise sought the Triforce, and he laid waste to much of the land in his quest for it. The goddess Hylia gathered the survivors and sent them into the sky, allowing her to launch a full-scale offensive against Demise. She was victorious, but the land was severely damaged. Uncounted years later, the outcrop is known as Skyloft, and its people believe the surface below the clouds is a myth. So keep that in mind when I talk about the plot of this game. But development time. Development of this game was planned for 3 years, but it actually took 5 years. Shigeru Miyamoto is quoted that saying like this was actually a really good thing, and they needed the first 2 years to kind of experiment and figure out what they were going to do, because this game is very different from all of the console Zeldas before it. Once again, the producer is Eiji Aonuma. The game's director was Hidemaru Fujibayashi, and they actually previously worked as assistant director on Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass for the DS. And then Skyward Sword was their first project for home consoles. And he began to work on Skyward Sword after finishing Phantom Hourglass. And he actually worked on Skyward Sword and Spirit Tracks at the same time.
Wow.
So he was developing both at the same time. Yeah. And so when Spirit Tracks was finished, Fujibayashi then jumped back onto working on Skyward Sword. So, and it's kind of crazy. Like all of these games are so connected with their staff. It was all Nintendo EAD for these 3 games. According to Aonuma, the team's starting point for development was the Wii version of Twilight Princess, feeling that they didn't really realize their goal of making this vast, realistic world with Twilight Princess. So that's what they really wanted to do with Skyward Sword. They also sought to create a memorable experience similar to Ocarina of Time, because if there's one thing you should take away from this entire Zelda history series, it's that Nintendo was living in the shadow of Ocarina of Time until Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, wow.
It's true. That's
Totally
the
true.
big takeaway. Like, it wasn't until Breath of the Wild that I feel like they surpassed Ocarina of Time, and they were just kind of chasing the dragon essentially the whole time. So I think for development, not to say the games before were not that good. Like, I feel like Majora's Mask is a very good game.
I love Majora's Mask.
And also, like, I mean, all these, like Twilight Princess, they're all good games. It's just for some reason Ocarina of Time really like connected with people in a way that none of the other Zelda games could. I think with development, I'm going to break this up into pieces though for Skyward Sword because there's a lot to talk about. So let's start with the story and the setting. So as you probably noticed when I was talking about the chronology and this being the first ever game in the chronology of the Zelda series, Nintendo essentially wrote themselves into a corner when they wanted to do the story. So they wanted Skyward Sword to be an origin of the Master Sword. They figured that out when like they were going to make, because the whole game's premise is using the Wiimote as a sword. That was the big seller for this game. And as we all know, Nintendo typically does gameplay first and then makes the story fit around it. So they knew they were going to use the Wii Motion Plus to do the sword. So we're now going to use the Skyward Sword and thus the Master Sword as the focal point of this whole story. But the problem is, how do they go about doing that? Like, do they include the origins of Hyrule as well as the origins of Skyloft? Like, what do they do? So what ended up happening, the director I mentioned before, Hidemaru Fujibayashi, faked illness and locked himself in a hotel room for like 24 hours to write the synopsis in one day, just to get all distractions out. Then he gave that to writer Naoki Mori, who wrote all the dialogue based on that synopsis, and that's what they used to like work out the story of the game. Like, that's kind of how it started. A big thematic change with this game versus past games. I already talked about how Zelda was no longer a damsel in distress, but in Skyward Sword, Zelda is not a princess at all. She is not nobility. She is actually a childhood friend of Link, and they felt like having the two characters as childhood friends kind of cut down on the extraneous plot elements of like being a noble and him being a knight and all this stuff. They're like, let's just focus on them being friends, and he goes to find her because they're friends. There is a sword spirit named it's Fi. It's Fi. I'm assuming it's Fi. It could be Fi. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I don't know either.
They were created before the implementation of the Wii Motion Plus, and she was going to be a part of some different like undefined gameplay like concepts, essentially, like kind of related to motion control and stuff. It was going to be your fairy that tells you how to do stuff. But then once that happened with the Wii Motion Plus stuff, they decided that she is kind of going to be the voice of Link that explains things, since Link is a silent protagonist. Actually all of Fi's dialogue was written by the different people who wrote each area of the game. And then Fujibayashi actually took all that dialogue and wrote it all in his own voice, so that way she could actually be a character. Because before she was just like technical mumbo jumbo back and forth, and then he kind of cleaned it up and made it sound like she's actually a living being and not a tutorial, which I thought was pretty interesting. So the game actually uses a lot of warm colors and brushstroke like stuff, and that's because all of the art in this game is inspired by 19th century Impressionist painters. I thought this was really cool. I had no idea this was a thing.
Well, that's cool.
Talk about Claude Monet. Where my water lily fans at?
Claude Monet. I'm going to Google this.
Paul Cézanne. What's up? If you look at that skybox, it's all Cézanne. Okay. So they actually referred to like this Impressionist painting and then also doing like a cartoony balance with it because they wanted to like have it be like a transition from like young to old. Whereas when the game starts, it looks a little more cartoony, and then it transfers to an older version to Link, and it's like Impressionist painting, which I thought was pretty neat. But the team thought this art style would properly portray the more exaggerated actions of some characters, and also like keep it so he looks mature. Because they wanted Link to look like an adult. You know, they didn't want him to look like a kid that's also an adult. That's very confusing. I think everyone can agree on that. Design-wise, the game was changed quite a bit from Twilight Princess because of the Wii Motion Plus. Originally, they were not going to use the Wii Motion Plus at all until they saw what you could do in Wii Sports Resort with it, which I thought was funny. They saw their own Nintendo game and were like, wow, we could actually really use this in Skyward Sword. So they decided to use the Wii Motion Plus. But this also meant they adjusted the enemy AI, so the AI will change stance based on how you're pointing the sword, which I think is kind of cool. Yeah, so you're actually like sword fighting something and it's adjusting to you, which I think is pretty neat. This is a fun fact. Skyloft, the starting area, was originally going to be a map overview. Like it was going to be like Mario, like Super Mario World.
Oh, okay.
And then they decided to make it into a like main location because the other environments in the game, the 3 surface-based worlds, which are forest, volcano, and desert, are all so contrasting from one another, they couldn't segue into it. So then they decided to make Skyloft like a place where there's like people moving around and little side quests going on. And all that like time-driven mechanics, they just took those straight from Zelda's Majora's Mask and like updated it. Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, Majora's Mask was really cool for that because like every character had like a routine that they were doing for the 3 days in the game that they did every single time. It's very cool.
Yeah, and so they used that in Skyward Sword, which I thought was really neat. Pacing is very different in Skyward Sword as well. They wanted to compact the world so that you'd get more puzzles quicker, like more encounters quicker, if you're kind of looking at it in like a D&D perspective. So what they did is they actually had environmental puzzles just in the landscape, not just dungeons, you know, where I feel like other games, it's like you're really just getting those puzzles in dungeons. Now there's puzzles all throughout the world, which if you look now at Breath of the Wild is something they definitely took to heart.
Yes.
I think it's kind of cool. Also, they wanted you to like appreciate the scenery. So you do go to some repetitive places in Skyward Sword, which I get. I don't know if I agree with this. I was realizing as I was reading it earlier when I was doing the research on this, they say they want you to go to places repetitively because they want you to like appreciate the scenery. But how much is too much? You know,
that's a good question.
So I wonder.
We already know from like Phantom Hourglass too that people don't necessarily like retreading the same stuff over and over.
Exactly, and I mean I am currently playing Dark Souls, and I can say that a lot. So each surface world did have a specific theme, as I said before, that contrasted one another. So there's a forest overworld, and that one revolved more around landforms altering gameplay. The volcano world is all about verticality. So it's like a lot like higher and lower than other, and you got to use more like moves to get up and around places. And the desert overworld was themed around the duality between past and present, which I thought was pretty cool. So like for example, the forest would be like mostly flat but have like environmental puzzles to go like solve, while the volcano world had like a lot of hills and a lot of cliffs and a lot of lava, you know, just like to make it so a little harder. And the Lanayru Desert, which you should know about from Breath of the Wild, is the desert area. And that place shifts time. There's like time shifting stones that you go to, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
There's also something called the Silent Realms, and those were a new mechanic filled with enemies that you could not beat. And you were actually supposed to sprint through. It was like designed to be a test of your like agility and speed.
Oh, interesting.
Which I thought, yeah. And so they kind of took their idea of the phantoms in Phantom Hourglass, which you can't kill, and then put it to a whole new level in this game where you had to like test your ability to race through a place without getting hit, which I thought was pretty cool. This was also where they set up in areas like would you be familiar with, you know, so they do a silent realm in a place you'd been through a lot of times, so you would know the landscape before you did it.
Oh, that's cool. So you could focus on really just sprinting and dodging and not like fighting your way.
Yeah, you knew where you were essentially. And they were going to make these special dungeons originally, but then they discarded it because they're like, I think familiar areas, like they wanted it to be a challenge, but they didn't want it to feel impossible, which I respect.
Yeah.
You know? The game's sound team actually consisted of 10 people. 5 of them were general sound design, and 5 of them were composers. So Hajime Wakai acted as the game's sound director and lead composer, with the other composers being Shiho Fuji, Mahito Yokota, and Takeshi Hama. But our dear friend Koji Kondo, who was the longtime series composer of The Legend of Zelda, did have a supervisory role, but he only composed one piece of music himself, and that is the prologue video music, where it describes the origins of Demise and Hylia. So that music at the beginning is all Koji Kondo. And he actually made those with an electric piano and a Mac computer.
Nice.
Kind of cool. But there is a big, big difference in the music of Skyward Sword and that of previous Zelda games. And that is they performed this with a live orchestra rather than synthesized instruments.
Wow.
It was the first time that Nintendo EAD had used a live orchestra. Before, for Twilight Princess, there are some orchestral elements in that. Those were all done by the Tokyo division in Nintendo. But this time it was all about that for it was all EAD doing it, and it was all done like the full orchestral soundtrack. And Miyamoto actually was the one that insisted upon it, which really surprised Aonuma, because he was like, well, we're just going to do synthesized versions of these anyway. And then Shigeru Miyamoto's like, no, we're going to keep the orchestral version in the game. He's like, okay. So it's kind of a big deal. Gameplay wise, Link is controlled using the Wiimote and Nunchuck. Oh, you remember those?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Good times.
Better times. Yep. The Wii Motion Plus peripheral is required to play the greater majority of gameplay mechanics around you using motion controls. You're going to be waving around the nunchuck and you're going to be waving around the Wiimote majority of the time. In fact, it kind of frees up the buttons too, because you're just using the motion keys to attack and block. Jumping across gaps and scaling ledges happen automatically. If you're moving around and it's just a basic jump, you'll just do it.
Yeah. That's the normal Zelda thing they've been doing since Ocarina of Time, right?
Yeah. But it's I think it's because they didn't want to have to add a jump button in there. They wanted to free those buttons up. The only big change is that Link can sprint for short distances, but he has a stamina meter, which I think is why those silent zones become so challenging, is because
you gotta balance your stamina.
Yeah, you got to balance your stamina. Okay, be careful in the Silent Realm. Link's sword movements are mapped to the direction of the Wiimote is flicked by the player. And like I said before, the enemy will always try to block your combat movements by facing you in different directions based on how you're pointing. By raising the Wiimote, you can actually do a Skyward Strike, which is pretty much actually the cover of this game. It shows Link doing a Skyward Strike where he raises the sword high up in the air. Very Star Wars A New Hope movie cover.
I bet there was a little bit of inspiration there.
Yeah, I like to think so. You control the shield with the nunchuck, and when the shield is raised, you can reflect attacks. And then you can do spinning attacks and finishing blows by like swinging both the Wiimote and the nunchuck, and hopefully wearing the wrist strap so you don't throw it into your TV screen. You know, gosh, what a great time for YouTube that time. All right, the game takes place on the floating island of Skyloft. If you weren't aware, this is the plot, and surrounding airborne islands. There are 3 surface overworlds where the majority of the main adventure takes place. Side quests happen in the town in Skyloft, and those are unlocked as you progress through the game. The different areas of the surface are located in portals that are found in the clouds, and you actually have to like fly on a shoebill-like bird called a loftwing to get to those areas. But when you get to the portals, you're then transported to the surface, and you navigate on foot the rest of the way. You can set up beacons on the map to follow so you don't get lost. That was something the team really wanted to focus on design-wise too, because they didn't want you to get lost. The save points are in the form of these statues that you preserve Link's progress with up to that point. Like I said before, you have a sword spirit named Fi or Fi. We don't know what it is. Who gives you hints and stuff about like enemies and things. Actually, if you summon Fi while you're looking at an enemy, she can tell you its weaknesses and stuff, which is kind of cool.
Nice. She's like Navi.
Yeah, exactly. She's Navi, pretty much. The bombs and the bow and arrow are all there. One of the new items is a mechanical beetle that you can like use to fly to areas that you can't reach, and he can like whip to grab like items and stuff or like attack levers. It's kind of like you have a drone, essentially.
Nice.
You can actually take damage if you fail a blocking attack, like if you time it wrong, and your weapons can break. There's like weapon durability, which I thought was kind of very like, ooh, are they like hinting at Breath of the Wild this early on?
Yeah, people were so upset about Breath of the Wild. It wasn't even new in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, right? You also actually use rupees a lot more in this game, too. Like, you use them to upgrade your materials, your equipment with materials and rupees to upgrade your, like, sword and shield and stuff. All right, plot time. So you are a knight in training in Skyloft, okay? And you have a class rival named Groose, because you got to have a rival. Okay?
Of course.
You got to have a biff to your Marty McFly. You have to have that. And Groose considers himself like a romantic rival for you in Zelda, okay? And you pass your exam, which is good. And when you celebrate and fly around with Zelda, she gets whisked away in a dark volcano cloud.
Oh, no.
And then you got to go now to the surface to find her. And you actually get taken, and that's where you actually go to Hylia, the goddess, and then the sword. You get the sword there, too, to prove you're a hero. It's like all that jazz, you know? Classic Zelda stuff.
Yep.
This game, like, I really want to play this game.
Yeah, me too.
I watched a friend play it he got it for Christmas 2011, and I sat and watched him play it for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, man, I really liked it then, and I really want to get it now. But the only way you can play it is if you have a Wii.
Yeah. I think it plays really well. Obviously, if you got to own a legit copy of the game, but I think it plays really well in the Dolphin emulator, and you can sync up your Wii remote to your computer and play it that way.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can like play it at 4K. It looks great.
That's really cool. I mean, there's rumors that this game is going to get a Switch remaster, but as far as I can tell, those are only rumors. So, and with remasters, you don't really want to hold your breath, okay? So, but this game's really good, and I wish I could play it. And I think if you've played it, you should email us and let us know what you think at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Boom. Plug. Tyler, what you been playing?
This week, we played Halo 4. You and I played through the whole thing. It's probably the shortest of the Halo games, so we busted that out in like 2 or 3 sittings, I think.
You really did. That was really quick.
Yeah. I've been put a little bit more time into Persona 4, but the only other game that I've been playing is Fuser, which was recommended to me by a friend of mine. That's like it's a rhythm game from Harmonix. That has been described to me, and I think this is accurate, as a Neil Cicierega simulator, if you're familiar with that that artist. If you're not, Google him and listen to all of his albums, because he just takes like other songs and mashes them up together in a way that's really fun. And it's legitimately good music, but also really funny the way he usually does it. And so you're in Fuser, you're like taking elements from different songs, like the vocals from one song and the bass track from another song and a drum track from another song, and you're mixing them together in a way that is really fun. You got to time it right, and you got to do the challenges that they give you the whole time. They're saying, okay, now have 2 tracks from the pop genre or something, and they get progressively harder. It gets pretty gnarly once you're in it deep, but I spent a couple hours playing that. I mean, that pretty much covers it, I think. That's basically all the games I've been playing.
Nice. Well,
what have you been playing?
Well, I have been playing. I beat Super Mario Galaxy, and then I beat Super Mario 64. I'd already started it, so it wasn't that hard to beat. Yeah. And now I should take a little dark depression break. I'm playing Dark Souls Remastered, and I am playing it. I'm not that far in it, but like I've just killed the Taurus demon guy, so I'm really not that far in it at all. But I have died a lot already, and I don't think it's cheating if it makes me feel better. I am 100% like following along with a walkthrough. Like I try to go in blind, but if I die in a really terrible way and I get frustrated, instead of getting mad, I start watching a walkthrough, and it's really helped me emotionally get through it.
Hey, who cares? It's a single player game. If it's not, you can't cheat in a single player game. Who cares? Who are you trying to impress here? Who's like blessing do you need that you beat it the right way? Nobody's.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I say.
Actually was like watching this video of these guys being like, yeah, I died like 100 times this guy before I figured it out, and I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm just
more that kind of patience.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try it a couple times, and if I get murdered, then I'm just gonna go ahead and watch a video. And it's been a lot better that way, and I'm having a good time. And I actually do really like the combat, as far as like it punishes you for like not thinking, essentially. You know, like if you sit down and think through the problem, you can usually figure out the right way you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. And it also teaches you to run away, which I like if you're really getting messed up. But I've been enjoying it, and I look forward to playing more of it this week.
Yeah.
And then WoW comes out this week, too.
Oh, yeah. I think it comes out the day this podcast comes out, Monday, right?
Yeah, it'll come out tomorrow. It's
yeah.
Spoilers, we record on Sundays. Hey-o.
I know. Yep. Spoilers. I need to fire it up soon.
Oh, yeah. I got to fire it up.
Get back into it.
I just did all my updates. Get back into the game. I'm going to do a little boost, you know? I'm going to boost my character. No shame. Get caught up.
Yep.
All right. I think that's it for the day, though. If you want to email us, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us. I'm at Mecoletta, MECOLETTA. Tyler is at Sneaker Elf. That's Sneaker ELPH. You can also join our Discord. Oh, we played Among Us on Discord.
Yeah, we did that yesterday.
It was so fun.
Too.
If you want to play Among Us with us, you got to join the Discord. The Discord, you can get an invite to it if you go to my Twitter profile and click on the pinned tweet. That's just an invite that should be forever working. And if it doesn't work, or if you don't have Twitter and you want to stay away from social media because it's scary, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com and I will send you a link myself. No problem at all.
So nice
also, we're up on YouTube now. All the videos are on YouTube now. If you want to have a secret tab open while you're working with us playing in your ears, you're more than welcome to. With that, though, I think that's it.
All right. That's
Do you
it.
want to say bye to everybody?
Sure. Goodbye, everybody.